Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, former North Laurel Jaguar Reed Shepherd announces he is going pro. And a package of foreign aid bills for Israel, Ukraine, and the Indo-Pacific has its first test in the House.
Plus, after some summer-like weather on Thursday, we are tracking some cooler conditions for this weekend. Your forecast on the way as Mountain News at 5:30 starts right now.
And we'll have more from Hillbilly Days a little later, but first, from the bluegrass to the big time. Good evening, I'm Steve Hensley. Laurel County's Reed Shepherd has announced he will enter the 2024 NBA draft. For more about this huge decision, let's send it over to WYMT's Armando Berry for the latest. Armando.
London native Reed Shepherd delivered a heartfelt message to who he refers to as his people. Big Blue Nation, letting fans know that he will enter the 2024 NBA draft. Shepherd was one of the best freshmen in college basketball this season and averaged 12.5 points a game, along with the second most steals in a single season at UK since Rajon Rondo. The NBA scouts will be howling for Shepherd, who is seemingly projected as a lock in the top 10 and as high as number 2 by CBS Sports' Gary Parrish. To say the least, this Kentucky kid has a bright future ahead of him. I'll have more on Shepherd's special message to the Bluegrass and his latest career move later in sports.
We are live in downtown Pikeville for the 2024 Hillbilly Days Festival, and the weather is fantastic here in Pike County. We are dry as we go into your Thursday evening under plenty of blue sky and sunshine, and we are not hogging the sunshine here in Pike County. Let's go up the road to Rowan County at I-64 in Moorhead. That current temperature up to 81 degrees. We are well above average. We should be in the lower 70s. So if you're heading out to the Hillbilly Days Festival, be sure to pack the sunscreen, the water, the sunglasses as we stay mild. Also sunny into this evening, up to 81 for Pikeville, 86 in Somerset, and 83 in London, also in Jackson at this hour. And not a drop on First Alert Pinpoint Doppler, but notice we are tracking that next weather system as we zoom out, producing some severe weather in portions of Missouri, also Illinois, and we could see maybe a strong storm close to Lake Cumberland by late tonight. But even there, the threat is pretty low, but we are tracking an increase in those rain chances to close out your Thursday. Lows are mild once again to wake up on Friday. Most of us see middle to lower 60s and possibly a few upper 50s to wake up on Friday. A few more spotty showers on Friday and plenty of sunshine and cooler conditions for this weekend. Your full forecast on the way in just a few minutes. Steve?
All right, thank you very much, Cameron. The U.S. House could vote as soon as this weekend on foreign aid bills to help Ukraine, Israel, and the Indo-Pacific. The national security assistance has been stuck in Congress for weeks, but comes at a critical time for U.S. allies. CBS's Natalie Brand has more from Washington.
To order.
A long-awaited aid package to provide U.S. allies with critically needed funds has its first big test today before the House Rules Committee.
I have been saying for months, we need to support our friends and allies around the world now.
This bill is probably one of the most important votes we'll have in our careers.
The House plan includes 3 separate bills with more than $60 billion in security assistance for Ukraine and $26 billion for Israel. Another $8 billion is pegged for the Indo-Pacific with the goal of countering China. Speaking with foreign ministers at the G7 meeting, Secretary of State Antony Blinken and his Ukrainian counterpart laid out what's at stake.
If Putin is allowed to proceed with impunity, we know he won't stop at Ukraine.
House Speaker Mike Johnson, aiming for a final vote this weekend, must try to win over conservatives.
I'm doing here what I believe to be the right thing. I think providing lethal aid to Ukraine right now is critically important.
Speaker Johnson hopes by putting separate bills on the floor, it increases the chances of passage. If he loses members of his own party, he's going to need Democratic support.
We are not going to allow America's national security interests to be undermine.
President Biden has indicated support for the package. It could come at a cost for Speaker Johnson, with Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene threatening to trigger a vote to oust him as Speaker. Natalie Brandt, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
There have also been reports of Johnson trying to get a potential ban on TikTok passed as well. The Biden administration is seeking to triple tariffs on Chinese steel and aluminum products. President Biden says Chinese policies and subsidies for their domestic steel are undercutting U.S. products. He also says Chinese policy allows for more emissions when producing steel. President Biden has also called on his administration to investigate Chinese shipbuilding practices, which he says is built on non-market policies.
China, if you want to be a big boy on the global trade spectrum, you got to play by the rules. And if you want to have an export strategy for your economy, go ahead. But you cannot do it by artificially allowing people to sell at what would be below profit so that you can get more exports for your economy.
Critics of tariffs argue they ultimately pass increased cost onto consumers and can result in retaliatory tariffs from other countries. Lawyers for the man accused of stabbing 4 University of Idaho students to death in 2022 plan to use cell phone location records as an alibi. Brian Kohberger's defense plans to have an expert witness testify that on the night of the murders, Kohberger's phone was not in the town where the killings happened. The 4 victims were killed at a home just off Idaho's main campus in Moscow. In a filing, Kohberger's attorneys said Kohberger was driving west of Moscow at the time. Federal law enforcement is on alert for any potential threats to the U.S. Jewish community ahead of the start of the Passover holiday on Monday. Speaking to a group of nationwide security officials yesterday, FBI Director Christopher Wray said the FBI remains concerned lone actors could target large gatherings, high-profile events, or symbolic or religious locations for violence. Wray warned the FBI has observed homegrown violence and a range of threats from abroad. The U.S. slapped new sanctions on 16 people and 2 entities associated with Iran's drone program. It comes as the Biden administration looks to punish Iran for their attack on Israel. Iran launched more than 300 missiles and drones toward Israel in a retaliatory attack for an airstrike on a diplomatic compound in Damascus. Most of the incoming fire was intercepted. The sanctions target executives of an engine manufacturer that supplies Iran's Shahad 131 drones. 8 criminals were killed by police in Jalapa, Mexico yesterday, and 5 more were detained. This came after federal and state police launched an operation to rescue a kidnapped person. Local government officials say authorities were able to successfully rescue the victim. As of yesterday, the whereabouts of those detained by police were unknown. New Jersey Democratic Representative Donald Payne Jr. remains hospitalized after suffering from a cardiac episode earlier this month. Payne's office said in a statement yesterday he is in stable condition. On April 9th, New Jersey Representative Mikey Sherrill made the announcement that Payne experienced the cardiac episode during the previous weekend. No word on when he'll be released from the hospital or returned to work. 911 call outages were reported in several cities in at least 4 different states last night, but not in Kentucky. The outages occurred in parts of Nevada, Nebraska, Texas, and the entire state of South Dakota. Multiple officials say texting to 911 is operational, but not using a landline. No word yet on what caused the outages. Dickie Betts, co-founder of the legendary Southern rock group the Allman Brothers, has died. While he often took a back seat to the brothers Greg and Dwayne Allman, he's responsible for the band's biggest hit. Betts sang lead and played guitar on Ramblin' Man, the Allman Brothers' only single to chart in the top 10. His style paved the way for others to follow, including Leonard Skinner, Marshall Tucker, and Charlie Daniels. Betts was 80 years old. Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, new data finds roughly 2.1 million vehicles on the road have had their odometer rolled back, a scam used to hide a vehicle's age. What you can do to protect yourself from this scheme.
Plus, we stay calm as we go into this evening, but rain